It's the early morning of February the 28th, 1994, and 6 volunteer pilots are on a bombing mission in violation of a NATO no-fly zone. The leader of the flight is pilot Ranko Vukmirovic from the Bosnian Serb Air Force. He and his men are in Yastreb J-21 jets, which are no match for the NATO F-16s in speed, maneuverability, or weapons. The Yastreb pilots are trying to keep below radar height, but now, with the target getting close, they're forced to ascend to 2,000 meters to start the attack run on a weapons factory. In doing so, the aging Serbian jets light up the watching NATO radars. 50 miles away, 2 patrolling F-16s are informed of the J-21's presence.
Black Flight, you have 6 bogies. BRAA 320 for 52 at 7,000. Flanking. Copy that.
The F-16s bank towards the target. In an attempt to shorten the war, NATO has set up a no-fly zone, and the F-16s have been sent on a route to intercept. Vukmirovic gets a visual on his target and arms his bombs. The flight positions themselves in pairs, one after the other, when suddenly a transmission comes through the radio. A pit grows in Vukmirovic's stomach. He can clearly see the trails of the 2 American Air Force jets dead ahead of them. He takes a deep breath. In previous missions, the American jets have only watched and warned the enemy, but not engaged. Vukmirovic knows if the F-16s had wanted to shoot him, they could have done so from miles away. But his eyes go wide as he sees the 2 F-16s approach at breakneck speed and roar through and past the Bosnian Serb flight.
Jesus! Did you see those old Yugos?
Despite the show of force, the Serbian pilots are not distracted and keep their eyes on their objective. The Yastrebs are old tech and still use optical sights. And as the target drifts into the crosshairs, the aging planes release and drop their rudimentary but effective 550-pound bombs on target, striking them from different directions.
They dropped bombs. Understood. You're clear to engage. Weapons free. Roger, moving to engage. This is gonna be shooting fish in a barrel.
At the very rear of the formation, pilot Zlatan Sirnalic watches the last of the bombs strike. The 6 J-21s turn back towards their airbase, but their speed is no match for the F-16s, who sweep in behind them, lining up their sights on the very rear of the formation. The pilot switches to air-to-air mode and selects an AIM-120 missile on his right display computer. On his head-up display, a box designates the target. The F-16 pilot gets a lock and presses the weapon's release button.
Box 3.
The missile flies off from the wingtip. The AIM-120 AMRAAM radar-guided missile fires and locks onto the running J-21's radar signature, rapidly approaching its target. Sirnalic is scanning the skies for the Americans when he sees an enormous flash. He wonders if he's been hit, but then he sees the explosion on his wingman's left wing, immediately shredding half of it off. The 5 remaining J-21s turn over and dive for the ground. One of the F-16s gives chase, following them all the way down into the valleys between the Bosnian hills. Each pair of J-21s goes its own way, leaving Sirnalic completely on his own. He frantically looks over his shoulder as he flies through the terrain, catching the terrifying sight of an American fighter hot on his heels.
Fox 2.
The F-16 fires an AIM-9 Sidewinder heat-seeking missile. It locks on to Sirnalic's hot engines and chases him down across the sky. Sirnalic, flying low, skims over some electrical transmission wires. The missile explodes near the wires and his tail, cutting part of his vertical stabilizer. But he's still flying. He reports the situation, but finds his radio completely dead. Alone and vulnerable, Cernalic looks over his shoulder, expecting a second impact at any moment. But instead, he sees the F-16 turning away. Back with Mikhailowicz, he and his wingman push their aircraft to their limits, racing through the valleys. But the F-16 relentlessly closes the distance.
Fox 3.
He releases another AMRAAM missile, which rockets towards its target. Mikhailowicz is still looking across the sky to catch a glimpse of an enemy fighter when the missile flies in and disintegrates his wingman. The Yastreb explodes into flame and scrap. He breaks into evasive maneuvers once again as the F-16 fires another missile. It slams straight into his engines. The explosion shreds the fuselage and flames pour out of the holes. He wrestles the dying aircraft, pulling hard on the stick and willing it to ascend as it burns all around him. As flames engulf the cockpit, Mikhailowicz pulls the canopy emergency handle and ejects. The F-16 roars past as Mikhailowicz parachutes safely down. The F-16s continue towards the next pair of targets. They swap positions with the covering F-16 diving into action, armed with a fresh set of missiles. But their fuel is running low, and in a few minutes, they'll be forced to turn back.
Approaching bingo fuel. 2 bandits trying to escape. I may be able to get one shot. Roger that.
South of the F-16 pair, Vukmirovic and his wingman, Goran Zaric, have been forced to hear their friends taken down one by one in rapid succession. Any hope they have is crushed by the sight of an F-16 appearing over the hills behind them. The pair break formation as the American jet sweeps in. With just enough fuel left to make it back, the F-16 gets aloft.
Fox 2.
Vukmirovic sees the missile launch off the rail and turn toward him. He turns hard, trying to outmaneuver it. But it's no use. It rapidly approaches from his right and explodes just off his wing. He's stunned, but the fragmentation does no significant damage. He looks back, expecting more, but instead, the F-16 pulls off the chase, out of fuel. But NATO command has dispatched 2 more F-16s. Vukmirovic looks back up. The 2 J-21s scramble for speed, diving down as far as they dare into the valleys. They skim the treetops, racing between the hills, with the F-16s all the while shadowing them and keeping up. They look over their shoulders to see the F-16s closing the gap. There's nothing they can do to come out on top. In desperation, Vukmirovic tries a last-ditch idea. He turns straight towards a cliff at maximum speed, Zaric keeping close formation behind him. His heart races as the 2 jets head straight towards the earth. The 2 pilots pull their controls as hard as they can. Zaric is crushed down by the G-forces as the ground rapidly approaches his windshield. Vukmirovic's jet clips the ground and bursts into flames. Zaric looks back. There's no parachute. The F-16s burst through the smoke, still in pursuit. He pulls back into a dive, rushing to use the terrain as cover. But they're far too close.
Fox 2.
The missile closes the gap and explodes into Zaric's tail. His fighter bursts into flames, and he loses all control. He releases the canopy and ejects, but he's far too low. The parachute has no time to open, and he falls into the fireball of his own crashed jet.
Splash 1. There's another bandit on the radar. Engaging.
The F-16s leave the scene and catch up to another J-21 flying low over the countryside. It's Cernalic, limping his damaged jet home to safety. He's keeping an eye on his gauges when an F-16 roars past. He's filled with dread and immediately pulls on the stick. His only plan is to gain enough altitude to eject before the American can finish him off. The F-16 gets behind him and he grabs the canopy emergency handle. But then, the F-16 pulls up alongside, matching his speed. He locks eyes with the enemy pilot. The American salutes him and flies away. Out of the 6 Yastreb pilots that volunteered for that dangerous mission, 3 never returned home. Cernalic would later say, "I don't have any bad feelings towards the American pilots."
Oni su imali svoj zadatak, mi smo imali svoj.
This event is usually referred to as the Banja Luka incident and represents the first NATO combat engagement in its history. Robert Wilbur Wright was credited with 3 victories, the highest score by a USAF pilot in a single mission since the Korean War, while pilot Stephen Yogi Allen was credited with 1 victory.
God help them if we use our F-117s.
Haha, niko nam nije rekao da je nevidljiv. Pogledaj ovaj film i vidi kako je oboren F-117.